Evening, everyone. We're about to start, so if you want to get to your seats, that would be really appreciated. Thank you. Hey mate, how you going? Right?
I'll see you after a bit later. Ortiz.
Sorry?
My surname, Ortiz.
Cortez. Done deal. Alrighty, let's go. Let's get to your seats, please. Good. Alrighty, thanks everyone for coming tonight, and thanks to everybody that's online as well. It's really appreciated. It's been really cold lately, hasn't it? So it's good to be inside. As usual, you just want to say or recognise the traditional owners of the different lands, countries, and places that the attendees are engaging from today, and also pay respects to elders past, present, and in the future. And we'd also like to acknowledge and thank our affiliate members and all of their logos are up there, so thank you. And also our corporate members, thank you again. And finally, to our members, we're starting to update this slide so you start to see everyone's faces up here. So this evening, you've all seen the agenda, so we're going to run through, we've got two innovation topics, and then we've got our main features as well. So Brad's going to do a little bit on wastewater and regenerating, turning wastewater into energy. And then we're also going to get Aaron from Hagen, Aaron Coltesi. He's just told me his last name. From Hagen, who's going to do a little bit on the environmental divisions, what you're seeing here tonight. And then, you just told me, didn't you? Our shaft is what's going to be our main feature from Rehab. And also Mark Poor's going to be here as well after about 7 o'clock. So we'll get straight into it. So it's short and sweet tonight. We're actually going to do a little bit of an update on the new NCC as well. So we're going to condense our little report here. So this is just a general sort of overview of what the main sort of communications have been for the last few months. It's not been many actually. So we'll have to put our finger out on there and get some more announcements going. But we have been sort of very what's the word I'm looking for? We're very active on LinkedIn. So make sure you get on LinkedIn, and I think we're going to start using the other LinkedIn account, aren't we? So what that means is the forum is a closed group, and you can't, what we found is you can't share anything. So when presenters are, because everyone that comes here is doing lovely presentations, but they can't share their photographs or can't share their content. So what we're going to start doing, evening guys, is we're going to start doing it in a way that can be shared and more people can see what's happening and we can bang our drum. So as promised, we're just going to do a little bit about the NCC. So I'm going to ask Tom to come up a second. He's going to quickly spread his bread. But I think everybody knows by now that what's happening with the NCC. So it's all coming from the 1st of May. And it's all adopted across all states and territories. And it's a lot of changes. I think a lot of people are sort of scratching their heads. I don't know if anyone's had a chance to look at it yet. But I mean, the main changes, Nick kind of covered it on a LinkedIn post. It's to do with waterproofing, also fossil floor base, then a significant number of plumbing changes, and a lot of references to the standards. So Dave's put together a nice little sort of snapshot of that, which Tom will go through in a minute. But this is just a reminder, if anyone's not familiar, we'd be really surprised if no one's familiar how to get to the plumbing codes of Australia, but this is just a reminder, and this is it's not a cheat sheet, it's more of just an overview of the things that we know about, and it's also possibly you can have a discussion about it as well. So I'm going to ask Tom Tom Lyons to come up and do a little spiel. So please hand over to Tom and give him a round of applause.
Thank you, Paul. So, with the introduction of the 2022 NCC, it's seen a lot of changes between the BCA and PCA in relation to reference standards. So all the deemed to satisfy provisions under ASNZ 3500 have been updated, along with a few fire standards as well. So the Hydrant Code 2419, 2941, and in Victoria as well, there's some differing legislation there. I know as well that 2118.6 potentially is coming out for review at some point in time, so look out for that one as well. So obviously the PCA is a legislated document in different states and territories, so plumbing compliance needs to be achieved by the performance requirements. The PCC and ABCB have put a fair bit of work in over the last 3 years in relation to quantification of the performance requirements. So instead of just saying, shall provide adequate service, it's actually been quantified now. So in relation to pipes for water supply, it talks to a maximum velocity of 3 meters per second. And then in relation to wastewater systems, it talks to plus or minus 375 pascals. So it's well worth having a look at that now, because old performance solution templates probably need a bit of a touch up. So just be mindful of taking anything from the current HCAA vault on the website, because they pertain to older versions of the plumbing standard, code, I should say. So this is one of the bigger changes that have now sort of correctly been displayed in the deemed to satisfy provisions. So this work's been probably 15 years, do you think, David, in the making, between Dr. Cummings. So there was a nice test rig that I had the luck of watching some of the videos, and it actually identified that when the junctions have invert grades, the water ends up running up the arm as though you spilled the beer on the table type thing. It's found its own level, and then the critical carrying velocity decreases and it's dropped to solids. So 15 degrees seems to be the most appropriate number that the empirical observations sort of found, and strangely enough, it's been in the German deemed to satisfy provisions since the 60s or the 40s. I can't quite remember that figure. So we've got there. So this is quite an important thing. I think it makes 40 millimeters difference in the invert on a project. So a little bit to think about there, but not too much to stress over. And then of course, unequal junctions haven't changed, 10 millimeters between invert and soffit. So I think this is a big thing for to bump our contractors, so that they don't go and install, 18 floors of actually 3 floors of sanitary drainage and have to pull it out. You know what? Silly enough, because the observation was only made in the on a sanitary drainage system, this was only brought into the deemed to satisfy on sanitary drainage, not sanitary plumbing. But then the same world of fluid mechanics applies to both, in my opinion. So what was this one? So this talks to the fact that the 2021 deemed to satisfy are now in. And one of the major changes in ground is that there's an informative section that talks to soil classifications as we sort of move into class 1 buildings in reactive P class and H1 type soils. And so there's a good bit of guidance there as to what a suitable installation looks like. But of course, make sure the hydrogeotech or the geotech is involved in those designs. To account for bushfire prone areas as we build in more unique locations, the bushfire standard has now been referenced under each section of the PCA. The performance-based design and installation must now meet the ABCB guidelines. So instead of just producing a performance-based report now, there's a consultation process that needs to occur, which is a simple paper where you just identify the stakeholders and the reasoning for the performance-based solution, circulate that, wait for a little while, and then issue the report. So most of the, if you're using performance-based solutions for stormwater drainage systems, the PCA people will be onto that, but I'm not too sure how long it'll take fair trading to catch up. So mark you as well on our website at the moment. The consultation document isn't there, but we might get a template up fairly shortly. Cross connections, so there's now a new risk rating method. Backflow has been made a matter of public interest, so elevated from the deemed to satisfy into the PCA. So there's probably process changes, but maybe the outcome isn't exactly what it might have been before. So then, of course, wells labelling schemes and that type of stuff as well. So of course, plumbing works needs to comply with the BCA and PCA. And then, of course, 1st of May. So if you generically across Australia's states and territories, if you've already obtained a building approval or CC, that has already set the PCA for your project. I mean, but of course, check which one is applicable. And of course, variations to buildings and designs add some terrible complexities to that. For Queensland, there's a few different things that they've added in to suit their local conditions. So it's said, and so yeah, one of them is making changes to the 15-degree junction, and of course that also it sits at the back of the PCA in relation to state and territory variations. So, like Paul said, it should be easy to find the PCA on the Building Codes website. It costs nothing. You can download a PDF which doesn't go green, which is very pleasant to use. And hopefully that was a helpful summary.
Has anyone got any comments or want to discuss any issues that they discovered, or is everyone okay?
Cool.
Good, we'll keep moving on. So
next thing, at the moment, the HCAA is preparing a proposal for change to assist the industry and bring the proposal for change speaks to the production of informative requirements for hygiene in water supply. So that would be installation and design for, say, softeners and filters and UV and other associated equipment, to avoid the need for performance-based solutions where regulators might see them required. So I've sort of written everything in the plumbing for the plumbing side of things, but we need a microbiologist to assist in some of the shaping up the actual industry problem. So this is a bit of a weird thing that we haven't done before, but it happens at like PIF and things like that. So I would like to sort of open to the floor if anybody would like, as a company or as an individual, to make a donation. I'm thinking that we probably need about 10 hours at $400 an hour, which should then wrap up that hygiene thing. If it's not appropriate at the moment, feel free to drop us an email at inquiries@hcaa.org, or raise your hand and make a commitment.
We'll put it forward $500, mate.
Thanks, Paul. I'll expect a few emails then. Once all employees have had it ticked off. But no, it's a great cause. Yeah, it'll help the industry. And of course, those instances where people have been writing to us saying, you know, the regulators told us to remove our UV filter from the project to the detriment of the hygiene of the system. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And of course, it would be it's obviously a cost burden as well to then have the client pay $3,000 to $5,000 for a performance-based solution to be prepared just in that for that single item. Yes, Rob.
Any centers, I guess, via our
HCAA a bit more detail about the specifics of what you're looking to change, but I
For
think
sure.
the example is a really good one.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm sure that's not the only one.
No, so it'll incorporate details as to how to design and install water softeners because they're currently not there. So in some regional areas of Australia, obviously there's hard water, and even in some cities, it'll contain details as to the design and installation of automatic backwash filters, cartridge filters, bag filters, which obviously can move between drinking and non-drinking water services, UV, chlorine dosing. So all of those things that sort of sit out there that we all do design on, but there's not a deemed to satisfy approach. And to make the potential work in drafting and getting it into the Australian standard, the HCAA sort of suggested that it'd be an informative section to start with. And it's all subject to obviously PCC's consideration and acceptance, and that'll fall into the next workbook for the Australian standards if deemed acceptable. Was there anything that I might have missed that you could think of in water hygiene stuff, Rod?
Maybe not quotable for me, but I think maybe what because it's similar vein in terms of are using it inside, outside.
Yep.
If so, what level of protection or contaction is on it? Like that's another grey area in the same kind of thing is taking it to drinking water level.
Oh, copper silver ionization would be another one that would be considered, yeah, or could be included.
So
Okay,
maybe we should put an email together, send out membership, and then take it from there, Tom.
I'll get that done.
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you, Tom. All right, next up is Max. Give a warm welcome. Max is going to do a little bit on CPDs. First time on the podium. No pressure, mate. Talking to here. Anyone?
Hello. So this will probably be quite a quick one. Just want to say that the past webinars that we have on YouTube currently, we're planning to move those onto the website just to make it easier for members to watch past CPD webinars. And there will be CPD points available for them as well. So we were thinking to have half a point per webinar if it's watched after it's happened, and then a maximum of 5 points per year as well. So just a little kind of announcement to let you know that they're up there and they count towards CPD points. And that's it. Thanks.
Well done, mate. Alrighty, we're on to the funny pictures. So we put this one up, obviously because of the coronation recently, but it's the main throne there. What do you make of that? Look at that for a sec. What can you see there, or what can't you see there? No ball, yeah, correct. What can you see in that one? Yeah, exactly. That's pretty nifty, what do you think? Trying to see if this is the next one's the winner. Yeah, this is the winner. It's from Mitch. Mitch, have you found even a bottle of wine? Congratulations, Mitch. You got a better way. Red. Well done, Mitch. Alright, so jumping straight into our innovation session. So as we mentioned at the very start there, Brad's going to come up and do. How long are you going to do, Brad? 5 minutes. So Brad's got a wee video. He's got about 100 slides.
Turn the video on.
So you just go to the next one.
Yeah, it comes up. I'll stand right next to it.
Okay, I'm just going to play this video first. Play?
Yeah.
Our vast oceans cover over 70% of Earth's surface and hold about 97% of our water. It's a delicate ecosystem, home to flora and fauna in coastal communities. In the past century, the average temperature of our upper oceans has increased by about 0.1 degrees Celsius, a seemingly minuscule figure, but one with massive implications. In the Western world, each person uses an average of 60 gallons of water every day. Almost half of that water is heated. When we shower, wash dishes, or do the laundry, that heat is discarded down the drain and ultimately into the oceans, which can cause temperatures to rise over time. In the world, every year, a total of 938 trillion liters of sewage heated at 16 degrees Celsius is discarded into our waters. In the United States, 350 billion kilowatt hours worth of hot water is discarded annually. This is enough energy to melt 3.77 billion tons of ice, the same weight as 11,000 Empire State Buildings. When ocean temperatures rise, surface water can more easily dissipate into vapor, creating the potential for more frequent and stronger tropical storms. Warmer temperatures will also lead to the melting of the polar ice sheets, causing sea levels to rise and damaging coastal communities and habitats.
There's a tidal wave right now of trying to live more sustainable lives by recapturing heat from wastewater. Innovative, creative people are putting together how we can become sustainable cities, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, changing the kind of energy we're used to using in the last century.
All around the world, cities and countries are developing ways to reduce their thermal energy footprint and harness the power of wastewater. In Vancouver, Canada, each day, about 100 million gallons of wastewater flows through the facility at the Southeast Falls Creek Neighborhood Energy Utility. The plant uses thermal energy captured from wastewater to provide heat and hot water to the community.
When we first started it up in 2010, we served about one.
We'll just stop that there. Just basically what we're going to talk about here is these this equipment. I'm working with the guys in Canada on trying to bring into Australia. The company is called Shark Energy, and my company here is called Hydraulic Solutions by Design. So I'm here to complement you guys, not to compete with you guys. So I'm here to help you guys to bring this renewable energy into Australia. So if you need any help, don't hesitate to contact me. I'm on the LinkedIn group with HCAA. The product basically does district thermal energy applications, which is the Shark, which I'm working on at the moment in some projects in Canberra, and also does buildings on their own, which is the Piranha, which can do hot water systems for the buildings on their own. So just running through this quickly, that's the Piranha. We've got one of those in Canberra at the moment at a nursing home, aged care facility. It picks up the sewer from 200 independent living units and an aged care facility, and it basically collects the wastewater, grabs the heat out of the wastewater and preheats the cold water to create hot water. 80% reduction in energy and about a 3-year payback in return on investment. I won't go through all these in detail. They're how they work. Emily might be able to have them there ready to give you later if you need them. And then we have the Shark, which is used for industrial, commercial and larger precinct sites. which basically filters the sewer down to a fine 3mm size, goes through a heat exchanger, and then we're doing one in Canberra with 1,000 dwellings where we're sending 20-degree ambient water in the whole precinct, and that is basically providing us with hot water via water-to-water heat pumps that are provided by Steve Eltron, and we use the ream tanks for preheat water. So it's basically like a geothermal heat source, but we don't have to put a bore field in. So I won't go through all those slides, but you can actually add a bore field into it if you need to add more or less energy. So I won't bore you anymore with it all, but if you need to contact me about it, don't hesitate. I'm in the LinkedIn group on HCAA, and this is the new generation of what's happening, particularly in Canberra. We're degassing, so people are looking for alternative energy sources. We don't have the electricity there to deal with the requirements for the likes of hot water. So we're now progressing in this manner towards renewable energy. And I dare say there's going to be other cities in Australia that follow in the same manner. Thank you.
Well done, Brad. Thank you, John. That's a great example of innovation. I'm going to skip through some slides to bear with me for a sec. But it's not a new technology, is it, Brad? It's been on the go for a long time in Europe and in US and Canada. There we go. Last slide. Happy days. Okay. We're on to our Aaron Cortese, who's going to do a wee presentation on the material that you're seeing here. So please welcome Aaron.
Good evening, ladies and gents. Thanks for your company tonight, and thanks for Em and Paul for the opportunity to present tonight. First and foremost, my name is Aaron Cortese. I'm the National Manager for Haugen Environmental. So the name Haugen for you guys is fairly well known as far as I'm aware for everybody in the room. Haugen's brand is synonymous with wastewater treatment and rotomolding manufacturing. But more recently, we're also moving into stormwater filtration products and reuse products. Recently, in December 2022, we formalised an agreement with Hydro International. And for those of you that don't know Hydro International, they're not a new company. They're not new to Australia either. They've been distributed in Australia for many years under different brand names. So Haugen formalised this agreement last year in December, in which case we're now the national supplier for Hydro International. So Hydro International, as you can see, they're celebrating their 40th year and in 40 countries around the world. So Hydro International, for those that don't know, are a engineering firm for water quantity and water quality, in which case we're picking up a good portion of their products for water quality and some of the water quantity as well. Seeing that I've only got 4 minutes, I've been told, so I better be quick. So there's a couple of products that I want to introduce to you tonight. Again, maybe new to some, but not to others. So the stormwater quality product we're featuring here tonight would be two on the left. The First Defence and Downstream Defender are gross pollutant traps. And the one which we'll see over and we can touch base on a little bit later on during the break is the Haugen upflow filter. So traditionally, gross pollutant traps, as you're aware, are focusing on the heavy pollutants in terms of sediment, gross pollutants, floatables, etc. And the upflow filter on the right there is focusing on the smaller particulates like phosphorus and nitrogen, etc. So again, some of these products can work either on their own or in a treatment train, And most of that treatment train effectiveness is demonstrated through something like a music model. So as keeping with the traditions of Haugen's product in terms of Haugen manufacture polyethylene and HDPE. So while some of these products around the world might be featured in concrete vessels or fiberglass, we're going the lightweight option of manufacturing them in PE or HDPE. So essentially it's Hydro International's technology in our vessels. So again, these could be in all different configurations. So they, again, they could be vertical vessels, horizontal, depending on the application. And in some cases, again, which we can touch on at your leisure, they can be installed in larger OSD applications as well. So again, without mentioning some of our competitor friends, you may be used to some of, for instance, some of these cartridge systems like this, where you might have OSD vessels with multiple cartridges. We'd be using this upflow treatment system, as you can see there. Not sure how I'm going for time there, but we'll. Okay, so depending on the catchment size and whatnot is depending what model is proposed. So again, the catchment size, pipe sizes, flow rates, and more particularly, council's water quality objectives would dictate what type of vessel is used there or how many segments. So as you can see there, so similar to the product that's over here, that is the Haugen upflow filter, or the HUF as we like to call it. Each one of those modules treats 1.6 litres a second. So again, depending on what the catchment requirements are or council's objectives are, would suggest how many filter modules might be on in that particular device. As I said, this product has the capabilities of treating floatables and sediment as well as the smaller particulates, in particular, phosphorus and nitrogen and heavy metals, etc. So again, from a music model perspective, you might, or we could on your behalf, model the catchment, and we might have a series of enviropods for the gross litter, or if it's a bigger catchment, we might have a gross pollutant trap, either the first defence or downstream defender, and then downstream of that, we would have a device such as this. So I mean, that one you're looking at the moment there is particularly large, but some of them would be in a small 1200 diameter vessel with 6 or 7 modules like you see over here. So again, what's the suitable application for this? Well, with most developments, we understand that council, and we agree with as well, there'd be opportunities where they'd be trying to use what I would call green infrastructure, so biobasins, sediment basins, etc. But of course, subject to the spatial requirements, they might not be possible. In which case, having one of these vessels under the ground, which it obviously can treat the same sort of capabilities without impacting, the spatial areas where, again, it's valuable real estate. So again, it's horses for courses in some applications, and many applications that I see, as a matter of fact. You might have biobasins, tree pits, and you'd also have gross pollutant traps or upflow filters such as these. I'm probably getting pretty close to my time already, but I'll carry on until I get the wind up. So look, maintenance like with these is similar to most, whereas the added advantage of this, which I think you're about to see here now, is again, it's maintained from the service on periodically by vacuum trucks. And then as required, on average, it'd be every 2 years, those filter packs would be exchanged. So again, a lot easier on the back than most. Those media cartridges are essentially about 15 kilos wet, as opposed to some of the bigger cartridges you might be familiar with. So look, again, without dragging on too much, feel free to get up close and personal a little bit later on. We can have a chat about that particular product in general. There's several others that we can also discuss as well. And look, if you can't remember the name of the product, like Paul didn't quite remember my name, that's fine as well. You can always think of the HOF. So our product's the Huff, but if you forget my beautiful face, well, you can always remember his. Thanks very much.
Fantastic, well done, mate. No expense spared on the videos as well, eh? Really cool. Well done. And thanks for taking all the liberty to take all these pieces of equipment as well. Alrighty, so you have a question? You're reaching. Okay, Greg. So we're going to be break, but before we have a break for dinner, I want to get everybody on their feet, the usual. And we've got some questions that I want you to have a chat about. So we've got 4 questions there, and these were put together by the lovely Emily. These were going to go on LinkedIn, but we thought we'd better have a discussion about it. So what we want to do is get everyone on their feet, go to a different table, not the same table, and have a chat just for a minute or 2 about each question. And we want to get a little bit of feedback. So we actually want to get some feedback as to what you think about these events, about what we could be doing to make them better. This is really important. So have a chat, mingle, get to know someone a little bit different as well. You've got about 5-10 minutes, okay? Same for the people online as well. If you've got any, I don't know if you can talk to anybody, but if you've got any comments, put them in the chat, and we'll Emily will look at them and we'll read them out as well. A few more minutes left, so make sure you cover all the questions. You want your feedback. Okay, we're going to wrap it up. All right, does anyone want to wind up the conversations and get back to their seats? Okay. Okay, everyone can sit back down, please. Alrighty, you sit down. How was that? A little bit different, is that good? Did anyone meet someone new? So the whole point of that is obviously for our affiliates as well, but also for members to talk to each other. But these questions are actually pertinent to who we are and what we do. And it really does get some feedback. So Emily has the roving mic, and she's back there. So anyone who wants to sort of mention a few things of what they discussed, there's a lot of discussion there. Did anyone actually ask any questions and get any feedback? Who wants to go to Parramatta? It actually comes up a lot of times. There's a lot of serious suggestions to go to Parramatta, but not just Parramatta, anywhere. Can't believe no one wants to talk. Oh my goodness. Surely someone's got some opinions. So who discussed question number 1? Yeah, who's got the mic? Here we go.
Steve and I thought it'd be a good idea. We could probably hold the one of the meetings up in the Hunter Valley.
Yeah.
We could have a nice dinner.
Oh yeah.
We could have a corporate golf day for charity the next day.
Okay. I see
And
where
then
you're
we
going
could
with
all
this.
have a nice hearty breakfast. Yeah.
Courtesy of Hogan, yeah. Once a year. Okay, I like it. Who else had hands up? There's a few. Mitch.
First of all, thanks for asking these questions. Great idea, completely out of speed. Parramatta, the group I was in were dead against Parramatta as a location.
Why? Why?
Distance, I think, we thought, the current location is pretty good. People can drive, they can park nearby. If you're getting the train stations just nearby, it's pretty connected to, the base comes the western line, it's also the northern line, it's
Mhm.
pretty open.
Yep. Cool.
Some of the other items, I guess, if you want to go through.
Cool. Yeah, anything else you discussed? Go for it. You got the mic, mate.
Breakfast meeting, we thought was a great idea. We thought kind of like an 8 to 12.
What else you got?
3.
3. Would you open to be different formats? So
We thought this is pretty
like a cocktail
pretty
kind
friendly
of thing.
and open. Although maybe once a year, maybe a cocktail kind of stand up format might work.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Any other thoughts? Thank you, Mitch. That's great. Thank you for your table. Tom's, I was suggesting something. His mum murmuring at the phone there. Front here.
Don't know.
Can't remember. Run. I think you said like twice a year or something.
No, I guess a clarification. I think the first
To Mike.
I guess the first question is, this meeting would occur in the city and then there'd be an additional one in Parramatta. Is that what the question is? Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Maybe once a year. We only do these meetings 4 times a year, but I mean, one time we go to Parramatta or somewhere. It's more accessible. I don't know. This is a request. This has become from a request. That's why we're asking the question.
Gary and I were speaking about that, Gary Sparks, right? Gary, and we sort of said, well, Gary said that there was a lot of young people in his office that potentially could attend a Parramatta meeting. And then we said, like, that's probably the biggest thing, getting enough people out there and then keeping this room nice and full as well of people.
Or like when 2 meetings that were joined together with that Teams call or something.
Yeah, that's that was one of the things that we did talk about, yeah, presenters across both, wasn't it?
No deal.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Tom. Has anyone else got any suggestions or answers to any of the questions? I'm sure there must be. There's lots of discussion here. What were you talking about? The football or something? The coronation? The wine? Has anyone got any questions? Or sorry, any sort of answers to these questions? Oh yeah, cool. Share them out.
So I've got Leon online who said the big giant yes to Parramatta. A no to number 2, because he'd like to go to Parramatta. A yes to number 3, a different format. And also breakfast being a good option, 7:30 till 9:30. And we've also got Andrew Shannon online as well, who said that no problems with the location change or traveling, and online is always helpful. If the distance doesn't work, co-location's good, and a breakfast is a yes here too. So it sounds like it's a thumbs up for breakfast too.
Awesome. So
Thank you, online people.
Thank you very much. So Kate's going to take Kate's driving away there. So we're just going to do a quick show of hands. So question number one, who wants to go somewhere else in the region? Just a show of hands. Oh my God, it's can that's about 15? 16 people? Okay, thank you. Question number two, are you satisfied with this location? Oh, okay. That's interesting. That's nearly everybody. It's probably about, what, 80% of the room? So those who didn't raise their hands, why? It was over here. So were you guys people that raised their hands for Parramatta or somewhere else, or just because you didn't raise your hands, so I'm just interested. You don't like this venue, or you're not happy with this? Oh, you're Melbourne based. Okay, cool. That's fine. Cool. So I reckon that was about 80% of the room. So that's cool. I mean, we've been here for a long time, huh? And it works well. It's nice and central. Has everything which side is a part of. Different format. So that's like a like a cocktail function. So you're all sitting down just now having a meal, but it would still be like a you've been these functions before where you come out with different canapes and stuff like that. So we'd be standing up, but we would have to look at how we do it. But it's a long time to stand for 3 hours or 2.5 hours. But we would look at how we do that. But what's the opinion on that? Raise your hands if you're interested in that kind of format. Ooh. Yeah, keep your hands up. We're counting. About 10. 15. And finally, breakfast format. So these things are in the evening, and everyone's got families or work commitments or other commitments as well. Would you be interested in doing this maybe once a year, doing a breakfast kind of format, starting at 7, 7:30, 8 o'clock? Oh, that's quite surprising as well. 80%. Cool. All right. Lovely job, Lee. That's great. Well, thank you. Thanks for everyone taking part. Thanks for your feedback. They're probably about to start serving the food now, but again, if anyone wants to go and see the displays that are here, please do. And we'll have a little break, and Mark's going to give me his presentation as well. So thank you.
Can you plug it in?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Leave one of the girls. I'll just grab my glasses so I can see. Me too.
Gonna have to pull it out.
Oh, yeah.
I forget things don't have USBs anymore. I'm always 10 years. behind.
Stop sharing. Sorry.
Does that mean we have to join? You got to stop sharing.
Was I on mute the whole time? Okay. Okay. There we go. In terms of water authorities, approvals, this is an ongoing process. And you'll see some of the names that are feature quite heavily up there. Hunter Water, Mid Coast Council, very recently Central Coast Council. Icon Water, we are currently working very closely with Icon, and that's at the trial stage and hopefully having something this year. Sydney Water, some of our smaller structures have been approved for quite a while, but the maintenance hole or manholes, approval is imminent on those. And as you can see, throughout Australia, pretty well covered. So as the water service coordinators in the room will be aware, there was some changes that came through at the end of last year in terms of the smaller maintenance equipment, and in particular, the maintenance shafts. So I might just put those up there. So there's some screenshots there from the quarterly forum that Sydney Water had with the WSCs. And by way of summary, this is my interpretation that Sydney Water are moving away from using the maintenance shafts. It's effectively going to be a soft ban because of the restrictions they put on those. They will be moving towards maintenance chambers. That's a 600 mil chamber. And that's in place of a maintenance shaft and actually in place of maintenance holes in some instances. The spacing has been tweaked a little bit as well, without going into too much detail about that. And also they're looking to maybe change the type of covers that are being used as well. So the reason why we're having these changes, it's to do with the operations team, the kind of equipment that's being used at the moment. The traditional maintenance shafts, as you can see down the bottom there, were just simply too small, especially with a 225 riser or a 300 riser, getting something like a 6-inch tiger tail or some of the larger cameras and trying to get around a 90-degree bend, obviously proving very difficult. And there was some cases there of jet of blowback and someone actually getting hit in the face, I believe. So yeah, so that was basically where it's been driven from. So, which brings us to the range, the Arwashelf range, and you can see we've got a family of structures there. Starting with our DN1000 maintenance hole. And you can see here we've got preset base types. Now, this is a departure away from the traditional systems, which are either cast in situ or have set angles that can be called upon to be made. So we've got preset base types here. As you can see, 11 base types, the installation up to 6 meters. That's what's appraised to 6 meters. At the moment, we're supplying reticulation size, so 150, 225, 300, and different riser size components there, and you can see the compliances. We have a hybrid 800, which is in between the maintenance chamber and the 1000. Now, this is a pretty cool concept that we have for relining a degraded gas-attacked maintenance hole. So that's designed to re-sleeve and permanently reline a maintenance hole, a 1000 maintenance hole. The voids between the new parts and the old chamber would be filled with a quickset cement. I do have extensive, I won't bore you with too many slides on that, but it's one to keep in mind for reline renovation. 600 maintenance chamber. This is the one that's making some pretty big appearances now in the Sydney Water network. I've been attending quite a few installations. I have also been lucky enough to do a lot of the plans and talking to a lot of consultants about these. I've learned a lot in the last few months about what they're capable of and how they work. And so a lot of the contractors as well have been on a bit of a learning curve with these. So as you can see there, 9 preset base types, and we've got a couple of riser sizes, but I'll get into a little bit of that as we move on. Our poor forgotten child there, the maintenance shaft is probably going to go the way of the dinosaur now. That the junction one specifically, the straight through could still be used up to 2.5 meters deep and up to 15 degrees deflection. But in Sydney Water, those junction bases are now fairly well obsolete. We also do a TMS, obviously, for where the line terminates. So our shaft have formed channels, as you can see. It's interesting to note there's a berm there between the channels, and that's there to help it increases the velocity, similar to our Venturi, I suppose. and hydraulically, they work very well. We have 0% fall in our bases, which is also quite a big departure away from traditional maintenance holes, which have 30 to 50 mils fall in them. And the concrete structures need that because of their porous and grabby nature, whereas ours are more or less Teflon coated, if you like. So what happens if you need an angle that's not exactly what we have in the product book? Well, we've got a bit of an ace up our sleeve with the ball joints. We're not the only ones on the market that have this concept, but ours sort of an optional add-on that we can put on. Don't necessarily have to use them. But if you've got incoming grades or horizontal deflections, those ball joints can allow for 7.5 degrees horizontal deflection and up to 13% grades up or down. So it gives plenty of variation. So you'll notice on the maintenance holes, we had straight through 15, 30, 45, 60, and so on. Those ball joints allow you to catch any angle infinitely in between those. That's pretty much how it works. You can see there that the bedding's been set down, the base is in place, the ball joints in socketed ball joint on there, and the pipe deflecting away. I do have a sample on the table if you wanted to have a bit of a play with that. And you can see there the outgoing grade. So it allows for plenty of flexibility, and the contractors, although a little bit baffled initially how they were going to make it work, as soon as they had a go with it, they were quite impressed with the amount of flexibility, because every trench you open is going to be a bit of a Pandora's box. You don't know what you're going to find. So it is a modular system. As you can see there, base, risers in different configurations, and the cone. So it's rubber ring jointed, and these are designed to be completely watertight and set for 100 years once you've got those in. Also, at the top of that cone, that area there can be cut up to 250 mils. So you can get really fine adjustments there before your concrete lid's placed on top. And that there's a 4.5 metre installation up in the Hunter region. We've been operating pretty successfully up there for about 5 years, Steve, maybe 5 years in Hunter Water. So we're doing really well in the subdivision space up there. You can see how the components work. Same with the 600, it's probably even a little bit more simple. Base, riser and cover, select your base type, 2 or 5 metre riser, which is then cut by hand, could be a hand saw, reciprocating saw, something to that effect. And then just a B or D class cover. So it's a bit of a Lego set, if I was going to simplify it. All rubber ring jointed, no welding, no gluing. So it's a real flexible and fast system. If you've got external drops coming in, high level drops, we do have a solution for that as well. Obviously, it's a bit of a simplified photo there, but we have a fitting called the Awa Dock. And with that, you can simply core a hole in the side of your riser and add that rubber seal, and then simply screw in the green fitting. That can be anywhere on that vertical axis. It may be an external drop or an internal drop. We can do both. So you can see here, that's basically how the fitting looks. And again, I do have the fittings on the table, so I encourage you to have a bit of a look. Some simple tools, just a 200 mil hole saw for this particular fitting, and a clock face wrench, which is used to wind that conical fitting into that rubber seal. There you can see the drop junction and the external drop headed down to that inlet at the base. And that was again from one of our installers up there in Newcastle, sporting a lovely Rehau hat. And you can see the external drop, and you can see the utilisation of ball joints there as well. And for the 600, you could potentially have multiple incoming drops as well, anywhere along that vertical axis. So OSHAF is 100% permanently leak proof. It's brilliantly engineered in the way that seal is encased and caged in that polypropylene housing. So what that means is that the seals are completely load independent, so that the rubber seals never get stressed like you would see in a traditional setup. The material itself, polypropylene, lends itself really well into a systems because it is highly resistant to gas attack. pH 1 to pH 13 is a pretty amazing range. Temperature resistance there, pretty good as well. And compared to the traditional concrete structures, it's pretty well impervious to the H2S gases that we see. And if you have areas with reactive soils and that there's plenty of that around the state, then obviously this is a pretty good choice as well. So one of the questions we get all the time is, well, is it plastic? Is it, is it going to float away? Because we all know that trying to push a beach ball down into water will result in it smacking you in the face, otherwise known as the Archimedes principle. There you go, Matt, I used it again. But the way we combat that is with the correct compaction, and it holds onto those horizontal ribs and it's effectively locked into place. So you can install an hour shaft in 5 meters of groundwater from the pipe, invert upwards, and without any dramas at all. No concrete base needed, no encasement, no stabilized sand. You can use it if you really feel that way inclined, but it's not a requirement. Which brings me to a time lapse we did recently in Queensland, Steve, and this gives you a real-time indication of how quickly these install. Hopefully this isn't too loud. Is that playing? So as you can see, it's a pretty speedy process, looking at 1 hour and 10 for the entire operation, backfill. So you compare that to cast in situ, you'd probably be back on the second day if weather permits to get that fully cured and ready to go. So you can imagine across the subdivision of many of these installations, the benefits that are involved there. Whoops, sorry guys. IT problems, there we go. Which brings me to the Q&A. Apologies, I'm a bit green at this public speaking gig, so forgive me for stumbling a little bit, but here's some of the recent installations that I've been involved with, and feel free to hit me with some questions if you've got them. I try and steer away from throwing numbers out, but it's going to be a rough guide. Double the material cost of concrete. Yep. But the time savings, it sort of comes out in the wash.
That's the 5 meters depth of the 600 diameter.
Yes.
That's right. I think you did want to hear that question. Just the 5 meter depth with the 600 manhole.
It's 6 meters for the 600 maintenance chamber. That's in normal soil, but up to 5 meters in groundwater.
How do we get away with the 600 diameter though? Is that been accepted by all the authorities?
Yep. Was appraised and accepted by City Water. Yep.
How do you get access down to the bottom of the shaft?
You don't in a 600. It's equipment only. And that one, you could have a very hard time. If you went head first, you'd probably never come out. But the maintenance holes with the ladders, they are intended for personnel entry. And to be honest, we're seeing a lot of authorities move away from the whole personnel entry ideal and going more remote and using cameras, remotes and jetters and that sort of thing.
Your ladders, are they 1657? They run style or they step on?
So can you come again?
The ladders.
Yep.
Are they to 1657 or are they step-ons?
They are. They're glass reinforced plastic. And I do have a sample of one here. They can unclip by hand, and they come pre-installed in the maintenance hole. Yeah.
How easy is it to change the height if the road level changes or something like that?
So in that instance, because so the question was, how easy is it to change the height if you had a change in road height, for example? Well, with it being rubber ring jointed and push fit, you could simply remove that cone. You could add a 250 mil and remove some of the material from the top. There's quite a bit of flexibility there. It'd just be a case of adding or removing components.
And is there a limitation? Obviously, there is with the number of poles you could have on the side physically before it falls apart. But
Yes.
yeah, with all the sort of maintenance holes, I guess hospitals is like 6 connections sometimes coming in. I guess that would be okay
That's a good question. How many holes could you have on it?
yeah.
We can, I know for a fact we can space them 200 mils apart, but I think your first limitation there would be how many inlets you've got.
Yeah.
And the most inlets we've got on ours is 3.
Sure.
So from that point, I'd say beyond that, unless you had a custom base of some kind, it'd be 3.
Or drops inside.
Drops inside, yeah. So the 600 maintenance chambers, probably what you're referring to is you could have quite a few of those. Steve, that's probably, I don't know if you've got an answer for that one, how many holes you could have. Yeah, you wouldn't want to have too many. 1. There we go. He's putting 1 finger up. No.
Any other questions?
Just on the buoyancy factor again.
Yep.
That was ordinary backfill. Sitting back.
Yep.
So just questioning the flotation situation here with the weight.
Yep.
This piece, you talked about the rings and the backfill.
Yep.
Those rings causing a problem, but I still can't see how we eliminate flotation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an engineer, but I know that if you've compacted that soil back to 97 or 98% in Proctor, that is enough, more than enough to hold that in up to 5 meters, and it's been appraised that way. So unfortunately, that's the only info I have on that. But we do have calculations to support it that I could certainly, if you were curious, I could send those through.
Yeah, I'd get each project structural engineer to confirm that.
Yeah.
Anyone else? I'm sure you've got case studies and examples where you've done that before, yeah?
We do have quite a lot with installations in groundwater. I think we did one in Newcastle that was over 7 meters in groundwater in the main street. Yeah, no issues there. No concrete involved.
Any other questions? Comments? Any lasting comments?
Designs, Brad.
Sorry, what's that?
Do you do design work or?
I do. I take the designs and turn them into bill of materials. So I get to see all the weird and wacky and wonderful different designs that come through. And it's been quite educational working with the Sydney water stuff. It is quite different from some of the other plans. Steve, you'll probably know this from down in Victoria. Some of the plans you get through, but yeah, it's been interesting looking at all the various plans. Yeah.
Awesome. So there's no more questions. I'm going to wrap it up then. So how do people get in contact with you, Brad?
Sorry.
How do people get in contact with you?
How many?
How do people get in contact with you?
It's too many years in a blue collar job. My ears are shot. So get in contact with me. I do have a business card over here. So it's bradley.martin@rehal.com. Pretty straightforward. I encourage you to call, text, email, whatever you need through those means. Happy to help.
Awesome. Big round of applause for Brad. Thank you. Alrighty, before we jump on the last presentation, I just wanted to mention about the innovation stuff. So it's not just about products, it's about it can be anyone. It's open to membership. So if anyone's got anything from a consultancy point of view, that's you, yeah. And if anyone wants to sort of get up there and just present about something that's happening in their consultancy, that's welcome too. So and for young engineers, I think I mentioned that before. So we're going to jump in to the main event. We're going to boom when you go up. Okay, please put your hands together for Mark Porter. Talking to the mic. Talking to the mic.
All right. Oops. Thanks everyone for the opportunity to have a chat. About a week ago, in contact with me and said, "Oh, hi. Would you like to talk to the HCAA?" And I went, "Yeah, no worries." And we have a chat. And she said, "Look, we don't care what you talk about." She said, "It could be the top 10 things." Oh, I had no idea. So I thought, okay, I'll run with the top 10 things. So this is opinion based. All right. It feels, the top 10 kind of feels like one of those countdowns at a late night TV show kind of thing, but okay, that's my name. I work for the Fire Safety Policy Unit and I'm AFAC representative on 3 Australian standards. So those who don't know me, that's a bit of a background of why I played in this space. All right, so number 10, it's possibly my favorite. Didn't get to number 1, but it could be my favorite. All right. It's the HCAA's fault. How could that be? The previous HCAA complained to Fire and Rescue New South Wales about the waiting times associated with processing of submissions by the Fire Safety Branch. Now, a long time ago, a bloke named Greg Buckley met with representatives from the HCA, the AHSCA Association, and they complained about how long it was taking Fire and Rescue New South Wales to process stuff. So the argument became, well, it's the standard that's part of the problem. Hence, a commitment by Fire and Rescue New South Wales to try and rewrite the standard so we would get less submissions. Now, I'm not sure what I've learned over the long period of time I've now set it on a standard. As soon as you write a rule, you create other problems. So we've probably still got the same problems, but we've tried to solve a lot of the problems associated with 2005. So that was number 10. So it gets more exciting from here. All right. On number 10 continued, sorry. I just like saying that. It's the HCAA's fault, all right? I just loved it. And the following 9 top points are, it's the AHSCA's fault. All right. Okay. Number 9, some early concerns from the Hydraulics Consultants Association of Australia. So Em sent me some questions. So I put them up there. My comments are in red. So someone said, do all the jobs with boosters or not require a private or fire service pumping appliance to come and do pressure and flow testing of the system, or is there other options? I said, commissioning requirements have to be complied with, and they were supposed to be complied with in 2005. Probably weren't, but how is this achieved is up to the design team. If you can get someone to prove your design meets all your performance requirements, 20 litres a second at the hydraulically most disadvantaged hydrant, that's up to you. Fire and Rescue New South Wales do not undertake commissioning tests, so we can't get dragged into it. And the basic reason for that is they don't want to risk the legal obligations of blowing up systems. Where a booster is installed, the system is to be boosted. It's one of the fundamental requirements in the back of the book. So there's an expectation from the fire services that the thing is tested and water's flowed through it and the hydraulically most disadvantaged hydrant performs in some way. And you get all that stuff in section 12 and the appendices S, T, and U. Is a permanent test facility needed to all installations now? And can they discharge to stormwater or must they discharge to sewer like some councils have nominated for sprinkler systems in their development control plans? So I've written, no, see intro into clause 8.10.1, which allows for testing to be done from external hydrants and use of the building's drainage system. So if you read the introduction in the general bit, it says, if you've got external hydrants and it's not more than 2 stories in height, you can discharge safely to the drainage system. You don't need a test facility. In regards to the second point, I've written, sorry, but I'm unable to answer the second part of that question. So that's probably up to you as a group to come up with a response to that one. So I couldn't answer that.
Is that what DCP is?
Well, whoever the person who put is asking, he's saying that some development control plans nominate the sprinkler systems to discharge to a sewer. So if it's a development control plan and it's not written that a hydrant system has to discharge to the sewer, then you probably don't have to, and because sprinklers have got the black water stuff, so.
There was some case law around these things.
Oh, you can hear you?
There's people on the teams as well.
I'll repeat that. Be discharging either of those, you're looking at 20 litres a second most of the time. Where's that going to discharge to?
I'm saying,
Most of the time you have a sewer pump station. Sorry, you can't discharge more than 2 litres a second sewer pump station to city water. I understand that, Mark, that's fine.
I'm not answering. All I'm saying is,
We're trying to figure this one out. So everyone knows.
well, I've got 4 minutes, and this was just a primer. All right, I'm not here till 12 o'clock. All I'm saying is, buildings more than 2-story in heights, you've got to put a test facility in. There's drainage. The NCC has been amended to indicate you can put them into a fire stair, et cetera, et cetera. Where you take the water to, that's not written in AS 2419. That's for your collective organisation to say where it goes. I can't answer that. That's out of my scope, beyond my wisdom. Apologies. I'm just saying these are requirements for a test facility. Yeah. So again, sorry, but I'm only able to answer the second part of the question. So that's something for you collectively to work out. Projects with internal storage tanks, will they require large bore suction connection now? Hasn't really changed. What has occurred is the use of definitions, hopefully in the standard, will clarify when you need it. So if you say for buildings having an effective height of not more than 50 metres, where a water storage tank serves as the primary water supply, if you go into the document, there's a definition about what the primary water supply, and that's the water supply that's supposed to provide 4 hours at the design flow. So if your tank is the primary water supply and there's pumps drawing in front and they've got to run for 4 hours, that's the primary water supply, and you've got to give fire brigades access to it. If it's a tank that isn't the primary water supply, a break tank, you don't have to put large bore suction connection to it, because the break tank will be served by a H pattern or inline or tank model booster assembly, and that will allow the fire service to get to the primary water supply, which in this instance would be a town main. So the break tank's been installed because the authority having jurisdiction, the water agency says you can't, your pumps can't draw off the town main. So you put a break tank on, we don't want access to it, because we can get access to the primary water supply to town main because of the hydrant system. So the key point is you as a designer have to say what's the primary water supply, and that's the supply that's going to give the system 4 hours of supply. It's a town main. If it's a tank, we need a large bore suction connection. So first point. Sorry, bro. For buildings greater than 50 metres, as above, except where H pattern or similar booster assembly is provided, then the town main can provide the required flow rate. If you look at the stuff about high-rise design now, it's basically saying you've got to put a tank inside in the building above 50 metres. It's got to provide a minimum of 30-minute supply at the firefighting flow rate, but it's also got to run for 4 hours, because off that, there's 2 full-duty pumps, essentially 2 automatic starting relay pumps. But you also have to provide a booster assembly. And if the town main can't provide the design flows for your design, then that tank's got to have a large bore suction. But if the town main can provide the design flows, it's H pattern booster assembly. That's the point. But the concept you've got to get your head around is we now speak to the requirements for a primary water supply. So when you design a hydrant system, you should be able to put your hand on your heart and say, the primary water supply for this hydrant system design is the town main, is an on-site tank, whatever. So that's the intent. There was a lot of questions from the HCAA. I'm going to go back to point number 10. Just need clarification on 611A only contains firefighting pump sets and associated equipment. So there's a statement in 611, which is about pump rooms that says the phrase in semicolon, sorry. And I've said, response should be completed. These are the opinions of not necessary Fire and Rescue New South Wales. I want to make that clarification straight away because we haven't discussed it. We do understand we're going to have to put some policy positions out, which will be on our website. The requirements of 611 relate to a pump room for a hydrant system. So my first point is that AS 2419 2021 was written around a hydrant system. That's the first point I want to make. It's written around a hydrant system. Now, I'm going to cloud it up a bit as I go along. So, associated could be that associated with the installed pump and driver. So, my interpretation of associated equipment for a pump room will be the stuff they show in 2941. There's the pump room, there's the pump and the associated equipment, fuel tanks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Now, first of all, I'm not saying this is correct, but this is my interpretation of the text, and we can drag Dave Woods in at the end or at this point in time. So just need clarification on this. AS 2419 does, so I went into 2941 and thought, I'll Google control assembly, I'll go control F and I'll find control assembly and all the sort of relevant terms. So you come across a picture like this, but it says does not define what a pump set boundary is. There's no definition of a pump set boundary, but there's dotted lines in their drawing. So I have no idea what that means. Only makes two references to a control assembly, one opposite and one in Appendix D relating to pump start arrangements. So I'm assuming 2941 doesn't even think control assemblies are going to be in their pump room. I'm not sure, I don't know. Clause 811 of 218 indicates that a sprinkler control assembly may be installed in a room readily accessible to the fire brigades. Now, the first point I want to make is, what does readily accessible mean? One of the things the ABCB beat up 2419 about was subjective sentences like this. Readily accessible to the fire brigades. Does that mean we could find the pump room in the far corner of this room because we could potentially walk in the main entry, walk up some stairs and come whatever? So I suspect in the next draft, 218 part 1, well, AFAC will be saying, clarify this. What does it mean? But at the moment, 218 part 1 says it can be installed in a room, any room. So what do I think at the moment? I'm not answering any question, but I'm just saying, in summary, I think a contradiction now exists in the words. I'm not saying I'm correct, but that was my interpretation this afternoon, and chatting some people, I think we've probably got a contradiction in how things are written at the moment. So I'm not sure how that plays out, but something for you to think about and ponder. And Dave, did you want to say anything at this point in time? Because you're the chair.
Hello, Dave.
No.
Well, neither do I then. I'm out of here.
It's outside our realm, really. In AS 2419.1, we can't really tell two things. We can't tell people where to pump the water to when we're testing, because it's nothing to do. We just end at the end of the pipe, basically where the water goes, it goes. And in relation to a sprinkler valve set or a sprinkler pump, it's out. We can't tell another standard where if it can go in our room or if it can't go in our room, really.
Well, that's the point I've tried to make. We've written around a hydrant code, but the sprinkler standard, because it says a room, if they put it in a pump room, does it now contradict 2419 part 1? That's the question they were essentially leading to me. So I think there's probably a contradiction, but something for you to discuss further, because I'm sure certifiers are going to probably raise this down the track. So apologies for the stress. Number 8, there's a lot of new nomenclature. I only typed that to see if I could say it. Terms in section 1, including, now, one of the points I'm going to stress is if you look in 2419, 2021, there is a whole heap more definitions. One of the fundamental problems with the wet standards is people have different interpretations of words that aren't defined. So one of the things we tried to do was remove some ambiguity. So before you read the document, have a look at all the definitions. So those ones there, attack and feed is just an attack hydrant downstream of a booster assembly within 20 meters of a hard stand. You can get a concession in regards to flow. Pressure, sorry, not flow. Full and half duty pumps just mean 10 litre a second and 5 litre a second pumps. Primary and secondary water supplies mean the primary one is 4 hours and the secondary supply would be something that's going to provide infill. So the classic one would be if you had an on-site tank that serves as the primary water supply and the town main's providing inflow to it, the tank is your primary supply and the town main is the secondary. And that's how you should read the language. So it's all about the primary supply. We were trying to say to industry, the body of water that is providing the 4 hours of flow, that's the primary supply. That's what all the stuff relates to. We've made a lot of references to NCC requirements, and the classic one is fire compartment. Now, if you read the NCC, a fire compartment has to be bounded by a firewall. A wall having a fire resistance level may not be a firewall. And the classic one is class 2 buildings, which have a whole heap of SOUs with a wall with a fire resistance level, and it might be -6060. That's a wall with a fire resistance level. It's not a fire compartment. So we've made a lot of references to the NCC to try and technically make it correct. And the last one, we've used a whole heap of terms from HB 50. So, but my little asterisk is a set or system of names or terms as those used in a particular science or art by an individual or community. So what we're saying is, we want you all to speak the same language. We don't want different interpretations about what's a source, what's a supply, what I'm doing. So please get your head around the definitions. Number 7, the implications for design from section 2, including. So one of the things that happened in section 2 is external and internal hydrants. They're defined, and they're defined in terms of enclosing walls, podiums, roofs, overhangs, etc. So you should be able to look at your structure and say, that's an internal or that's an external hydrant, and then that will then be able to determine what performance your system's got to get to. And the big one is a hydrant on a podium. So I'd look at that. There are 2 concessions. Whoops, too quick. Open deck car parks. It's not the largest fire compartment, it's the largest story. And the other one is sprinkler protected car parks. Simultaneous flow provisions are not required to be applied. And that was because when the requirement to provide the sprinkler and the hydrant flow was driving sprinklers being fire engineered out of buildings, it's like, can we reward it? So there's 2 concessions. And the other one, which will probably cause you a bit of concern, is the one in the back of the book about hydraulic loss calculations requiring you to include backflow prevention and metering. So it's from that point. It's not from, you've got a statement of available pressure and flow and it says you've got 150 kPa at the main. You've got to consider the losses across the pipework. So that's probably been a change that, and I'm not sure, well, I do know what the implications are, but that's where it's settled. Number 6. So essentially the hydrant coverage requirements are written for a DTS, a typical DTS building, not one that has extended travel distance, because that's performance. It was all about the ABCB said, we need a set of rules for a DTS building. So it's written around DTS. It places limitations on the use of street hydrants and feed hydrants to some degree, but for street hydrants, not more than 2. And places limitations on fire hydrant coverage from a fire brigade pumping appliance fed from an external fire hydrant or an external attack hydrant. So the rule basically says if you've got an external hydrant and you're doing coverage, you've got to cover all of the building. So if it's a 3-level building and you put 4 hydrants around it, you've got to get coverage to all parts of the top floor. If you can't get coverage to the top floor, it says you can only use those hydrants to do ground floor and the one below. It's basically what it says. So the changes were also to we're trying to get consistency across design for fireys. So if you turn up and you've got external hydrants, you look at a building and go, well, they should cover the whole floor, the whole building, or just the ground. So includes method of measurement rules, single distance from internal fire hydrant or external fire hydrant. So there's no more 60 plus 10, 1 metre in a room, et cetera, et cetera. Now, there's a whole heap of reasons for them, but I want you to consider this. Okay, this is the large isolated building with hydrant coverage, 60 plus 10, all parts of the buildings protected, happy days, whatever. All good, happy days. Now, I want you to consider this. Here's what happened when a fire occurs. If we look at this building, the area that was protected by the hydrant in the top, we wouldn't use that hydrant. We would not use that hydrant. So the hydrant you've put in the building to protect that area, we ain't touching it. No way. So that's out. So you look over here and you go, maybe we could use the one on the left, on the vertical pipe, or maybe the one over, or one of these on the bottom side. Now that means we're not running 2 lengths of hose. We're running 3 or 4, and this is for a deemed to satisfy building with supposedly deemed to satisfy travel distances that we can get 60 plus 10. What industry has always never considered is the implication of a fire in the building. So I want you to think about that when you go to the fire services and say, we want another length of hose, or we want another 40 metres. No, what you're saying is, you want us to use the hydrant on the other side of the building and run a squillion lengths. It's never, ever considered. So let's look at the next one. So the point I'm trying to make is the hydrant coverage rules are just about the distribution of hydrants around a building. They're not actually about how we may use them. However, I think industry believes that's what we do. Now, here's one that's using we've got a couple of external hydrants and they're protecting a low rise building, and they meet at the upper level, 60 plus 10, happy days, coverage to all parts of the floor, easy peasy. We put a fire in the building. We are not using the external hydrant that's covering that half of the building, because the golden rule in firefighting is you go from the bit that's not burnt to the bit that is burnt. So if we went up the stair where this fire was and started squirting water of it, all we would do is drive it across the floor. So we go up the other side. We don't use 2 lengths of hose. We use 3 or maybe 4. So what I hope you take away is it's never just how you put them is how they're going to be used. All right. Hydrant coverage, the rules, distribute a whole heap of hydrants around the building. But when you put a fire in there, in the majority of cases, we won't be using the one that's protected the bit that you're saying it protects. So, important point. Number 5, change to on-site tanks requirements, including building having an effective height of more than 25 and not more, do not need to have a 25,000 litre on-site tank. So you no longer have to provide a tank for buildings above 25 metres and less than 50. And the reason that moved is so we could get a bit more water in buildings above that height, or a bigger tank. So buildings having an effective of more than 50 require an on-site tank with a minimum capacity of not less than 30 minutes and capable of providing the required flow for not less than 4 hours. Easy peasy. Limitation on the maximum length of dry pipe may be included in design for below ground on-site tanks. One of the things I've seen over the last X amount of years is a below ground tank that we've got no chance getting water out of. So if you look in clause 4.4, there's some parameters around what's the maximum length of pipe work that should be installed. Now, I actually think below ground tanks bring with them a certain amount of certification risk over the longer time. So I think you should consider your options before you say, yep, we're putting a tank down here and we're going to do this, because they may not be able to certify it either at the point of the job at commissioning or at some stage later, and then it's like, who is at fault? So there's a certain amount of risk with below ground tanks. So what's basically happened is 2005's on the left, tank, 2 pumps, booster assembly, 1 on the right. You still got to provide 2 pumps. They come from a town main, no tank. But the interesting thing is water agencies, say like the Shoalhaven Council, they won't let you pull a pump from the main. So yeah, so you get forced to put a tank in anyway. Yeah, so I'm not saying it's everywhere, but I've learned of that. But that was the thing. Okay, changes to high rise, number 4. Required to provide 2 full duty pumps in lieu of a relay pump and 2 5-litre a second pumps. So the big change is we just want 2 thumping pumps that do 10 litres a second for the required number of hydrants, and they run for 4 hours. The requirement for the water supply serving to have no single point of failure. So when you look at the drawings in AS 2419, you'll see once you get from the tanks, it's all redundancy, you know, ring mains, 2 pipes somewhere, and it's so that we don't get a single point of failure in the design. The requirement for each full duty pump to run for 4 hours as part of the commissioning requirements. Now, one of the interesting things when we're writing the standard is like, well, we know the reason we wanted full duty pumps off a tank is to make it easier for industry to commission, because we know relay pumps rarely get serviced, don't get looked at. From a cost perspective, if you've got a relay pump and you're going to test it every month correctly, you've got to get some sort of pumping appliance to your building to run it or do whatever. So it was all about trying to improve the redundancy or the performance of the on-site pumps. But the big change that came was from an industry rep was let's make them run the pump for 4 hours. So when you're doing buildings over 50 metres, you want to make sure that the pumps you spec or you're confident with, that when you get to commissioning, they can turn them on and they can run for 4 hours. So if you're dwelling in the bottom end, I'm just giving you a bit of heads up, you're going to be asked to them to run for 4 hours, which may come as a risk commercially to you if they don't run for 4 hours. So again, on the left, we've got 2 5-litre a second pumps drawing off a 25,000 litre tank. We've got one manually starting relay pump down the bottom. Over this side, we've got 2 pumps drawing from a compartmented tank. Hello, who was it? From a compartmented tank, and then it's got to run for 4 hours. When at commissioning, those pumps are going to be able to turn on and run for 4 hours, and that would be pumping the water back into the tank. But that's the big difference in high rise. So loss of relay pump and redundancy for full duty pumps. So number 3, nearly there. Changes to the fire brigade booster assembly requirements, including, you know, the interesting thing is if you read 2021, you'll notice there's no clause 7.4. In clause 7.4 of AS 2419 2005, it just had a whole heap of requirements that you had to meet. And if you met those requirements, and it didn't matter what your configuration looked like, you could put hand on your heart and say, yes, it meets all the separation, etc., happy days, you can sign it off. If you read 2021, it basically says there's probably 5 options. Your booster assembly should look like one of those. And if it doesn't, then you're probably not complying with the latest code standard, sorry. So H pattern, inline, I pattern, tank model, and tank suction. Now, if you end up in the section 7 and you look at a tank suction booster assembly, All it is a tank with a large bore suction connection and boost inlets. And what we've basically said is that is still a booster assembly. That tank's providing 4 hours of water. We're taking it from there and putting it in there. So the requirements for boosters around location, et cetera, should apply. So have a look at those. Excuse me. Sorry. Allowing for visual alarm device to allow the booster assembly being located throughout the facade. So as the vision is in section 7, you can use a visual alarm device to move the booster assembly on the facade. Now, the interesting thing is if you go into section or appendix P, excuse me, there's a commentary about fire brigade booster assembly locations. And it sort of says the location you should pick should be the one most appropriate to facilitate fire brigade operations. Not the one chosen by the developer, but the one that facilitates fire brigade operations is what it infers in the back of the book. Amending the protection requirements for sprinkler, non-sprinkler buildings. Oh, geez, thanks. Amending block plans. Now, number 2. Now, this is the excitement stage, all right? So we're now down to the top 2. I could feel the tension building. Is my clause going to be nominated? So number 2, performance requirement EP 1.3 of the NCC states, a fire hydrant system must be provided to the degree necessary to facilitate the needs of the fire brigade, appropriate to, not the developer, the fire brigades. You should be, when you look at a design, you should be saying, have I created a design that facilitates the needs of the fire brigades? Not the one that is the cheapest, not the one that puts the booster assembly in the worst spot that still complies with the DTS position, but facilitates the needs of the fire brigade. And then we've got firefighting operations, floor area, and the fire hazard. So you're supposed to meet that performance requirement under DTS. Now, here's the interesting thing. This is the point I want to make. Vale Isabella Nash. There's a Queensland firefighter who died last week in a fire. She didn't experience the winter blast that Queensland are currently enduring. She's not going to see sunrises in 3 weeks, et cetera, et cetera. We do a dangerous job. I was in the job about 12 months, went to a house fire. It was a 2-story building alight. We were the second rising pump. I went in the door third. There was a hose line going up a red cedar stair. It was a flash house, up a red cedar stair, met a landing, went across. I ran up the stairs. I got to the top of the stairs. I looked across. Hose line had gone across the landing and the fire were in there. Between me and that door, the red cedar ceiling was alight. It was rolling. And I was like, taken aback. Like, you don't get those experiences at training college. When oh shit, I better tell them. So I ran across the landing, tapped the first guy on the shoulder and said, pointed like that. And when I tapped him in the shoulder, he squirted, turned the hose around, squirted me in the face mask. I said, look, we've got to get out. So we madly backed out. We're heading towards the stair, and there was a glass door over there in the landing. So we wanted over to the landing. We're trying to open it with gloves and stuff. We get out of the landing. We stand on the landing, a balcony sort of thing, and the red cedar ceiling comes down. It is a dangerous job. When they go to fires, they get into spooky circumstances. So what I'm saying to you, when your design should support fire brigade intervention, wherever you put something, what you're saying is young men and women are going to work from that point. That's what you're saying. They're going to work from here and they're going to work from here and they're going to connect to that booster assembly there. My point is, you should be looking at it from the end user's perspective, from our perspective. What would be the best circumstance for us in this case, based on the requirements we can do under DTS? But we do a dangerous job. There's young people going into buildings and it's quite spooky. So that's number 2. So just imagine what number 1 is. I'm really going to browbeat you. Okay, number 1. And the number 1 things are, yeah. Well, there's never been 1 point on all of them. You should seek to understand things 11 to 200 that we're not discussing in this presentation. And AS 2419 was supported by the members of HCAA. You initiated the rewrite. When it went out to public comment, we see whatever feedback we got from you, we addressed all those comments and then you voted positively for it. So they're my top 10 things. Thanks for your time. I appreciate you listening to me. Thanks very much. Cheers.
Fantastic. We dropped the line. Do you think it's worthwhile, Mark, that we do that?
Do you want me to?
The firefighter of the day.
Oh, it's all, everyone who does it enjoys it.
Yeah, I don't think we've done that for a long time. Hey, so what was the last time before COVID?
Send me an email.
But we can activate that, can we?
It's an interesting day. You know, you'll wear an SCBA and you might get a bit spooky and,
It might be.
you know.
There's online people.
Okay. No, we'll do it at Kirribilli. We'll bring it all here. Because we're a fair and equitable organised. We're going to put everything in this room on a Tuesday night at 7 o'clock.
I was going to ask exactly the same question, and when you talk about put yourselves in the firefighter's shoes, that was the single one of the best days I've had in this industry. And after designing firefighter systems for 20 years and then going to do that, it gave you quite a different perspective. I would suggest everyone, if you haven't done it, give it a crack. It is really cool. It's actually quite fun. You realise the fitness involved in being a firefighter when you've got to carry a big bucket of water and run a couple of minutes. It's really cool.
And the other thing now is the academy's up and running and they've got some really good props. They can run a service station fire, which is really, really hot. And they can, yeah. So it's pretty cool space out there. So
Just in addition with what I just said, it'd be really, I think it'd be beneficial to get some architects on board in that as well. Because they're the ones that put pressure on us spatial wise.
I understand there's a whole heap of players in the industry. I understand that your hands are tied when you go and speak to a developer. You go, well, we're not doing that. What's the minimum I've got to provide? I understand that. But that's not, I'm here to sell something, you know.
Talking to the mic.
Sorry?
Talking to the mic.
Talking to the mic. I'm here to sell something. Just like everyone else who you listen to, they've tried to sell a product. I'm just trying to sell something. So, yeah.
Mark, there's been a lot of conditions from Southern Shire Council discussing that. Like one of the conditions I saw last week was I'm not allowed to put a large wall section job. I don't know if you've seen that condition.
No, I haven't seen it. Do you want to send it to me?
I have. I've sent you an email today.
Oh,
Yeah,
thanks.
that was just. But it's.
No, the ones that are sent to me before I've requested them, I don't even look at.
So I just got it today. But yeah, the thing is, like, before they were saying, okay, you gotta get a performance solution to put a bunker style, business, so it doesn't look ugly. Blah, blah, that was okay, but then now they're just saying, you have to have you can't have a large wall suction thing, so they don't want to close the road. Even though in some instances, we still have that 3.5 meters open while you reverse back to the large wall suction. And we proved that to them, and now they're saying that you have to get amplification from city water, even though the section 7 doesn't ask for that. So my question is, does the fire brigade have any claim this, or does it just council on their rules?
So Dave would remember there used to be a Water Service Association operator representative on the committee of FP09, the hydrant standard, Graham Couchman, who I used to get on really well with. And he rang me up one day and said, Mark, do you know Sydney Water's operating licence is up for review? And I went, no, Graham, where should I look? So Graham said, well, you should go here and have a read of this. So we're on the phone. I said, and what should I say, Graham? And he says, well, I think you should say this, this, and this. So the fire brigades in 2016 wrote a letter to IPART complaining about the declining performance of the Sydney Water Network. Now, we've been with IPART for 6 years now. We basically put letters in all the time saying, you know, there's some issues with Sydney Water that that need to be addressed. And again, how there's multiple players in the space. One of the big players in the space with Sydney Water is the state government. If you read the Sydney Water Act, they're a corporation. They have one stakeholder and they've got to provide a dividend to the stakeholder. So why Sydney Water runs a pressure reduction program is so they don't have to do maintenance, and they're continually driving it down because, and we're saying, but what you're doing while Sydney Water supposedly continue giving their dividend to the state government, everyone in the community is paying because you've got to pay for a large bore suction connection, and then the people who live in the apartment have got to pay for the maintenance of the pumps, et cetera, et cetera. But we've had no success. All I could say to the HCAA is they should become a vocal player in this space. You know, they should be advocating every time Sydney Water's license come out, there should be a collective argument put in saying these are the consequences of Sydney Water's network performing the way it does, and you'll get changed. But if you're just silent, then we're going to get your nightmares. And Sydney Water and Sutherland Shire Council, the really interesting thing is, what if it happens that you've actually got to provide a hard stand on site?
Yeah.
And that's where it's going to.
They are mentioning as well that the road cannot be a hard stand because it's not 100% level.
Oh,
What road is level? I mean, that's...
No, but what I'm saying is, what I can see happening is the councils, they don't want to give up their parking spaces to the people who are, you know, retailing in that street. So what I can see happening down the track is, if you've got a class 2 and you've got no flow out in the street, you're going to have to create a space for a big red truck to drive on site and suck off a tank. And the developers are going to be freaking out then. But I don't know where it's going to settle. Send me your email. I'll forward it on to people and raise concerns and do whatever. But a council is the authority having jurisdiction, not the fire service. They can make whatever decisions they want, like Sydney Water. So yeah, you're going to get dragged into that space. I will use it, but I don't know if I'll change anything. So,
Any other questions?
It's obvious to me.
There's a guy at the back there with his hand up.
Can you repeat that question? Or for those who are online as well, couldn't hear what you said.
Oh no, I just said this. The man at the back put his hand up before the man at the front. So in a fair and equitable space, I picked the man who put his hand up first. All right.
Thank you. Just a quick one. Look, previously, because there's standard being 2005, on section 2 notes that a rise in 1 or 2 stories or a rise of 3 or more stories.
I know.
But then you go.
There's
to
it, you know,
2021
yeah.
code, you've got a rise of more, a rise of less than 2,
Yep.
a rise of more than 2. So if you have a rise of 2.
No, yep, it's a mistake.
Yeah.
It should reflect the intent of the 2005 one. So you know how I said Fire and Rescue New South Wales have to put a couple of position statements up? That'll probably be one of them saying this should be read this way. So
the lesser performance or the greater performance?
no, the 2005 requirements, whatever it was, a link to that. So your name was? So Alex, just remember it's Dave Woods' standard. That's all you need to know. So I'm out of here. You don't want to ask a question?
Anyone else? Are we good? Cool. I would just like to say, on behalf of the HCA, we're very privileged for you to come here, and you're dedicated, and you're passionate, and your enthusiasm is awesome, man. So big round of applause to Mark, please. Thank you. Okay, door prize. We're getting to we're a little bit overrun, but it's okay. We're going to do a wee, two prizes, two? It's going to be really professional.
So I'll get that green thing at some point.
Sure. Yeah, when you pick it.
I'm a barrel person.
Yep.
It has to be below 101.
So we're going to go up 1 or 2, down 2, yeah? Drum roll.
Clark Lee from Scott Collins. Is Clark here?
Isn't here. Oh, yay! Happy days. Congratulations. Come down and get a bottle of wine.
and Howard Christie.
Hey, one down. Better White. Happy days. All right, we're a little bit over time, but that's the end of the meeting, and thanks for coming out. We will do a poll as well about the whole the questions we did to the whole membership, and thank you. So please network, go at the bar, be you. Thank you. Good night.